From Daniel Radcliffe collabing with the Trevor Project to the witch trials of JK Rowling, 2023 saw another step by JK Rowling into the madness that is TERF mania. Today, we will continue to look at everything JK Rowling has ever done that was transphobic with the year of 2023. Now, as always, this is part of an ongoing series where I cover everything she's ever done way back as early as 2017. So if you haven't seen the original episodes, go and check them out if you want to, but you don't have had to understand what I'm going to talk about today. Without further ado, let's get started with today's video. Hello and welcome to Matriarchetype. I will be your goddess for today because we are talking about everything transphobic JK has ever done. As many of you know in this series, I am taking inspiration for each episode from creators that I know and love and that I know you love as well. If you can guess today's creator, drop it down in the chat below. Now, if you can't wait to get your cheeky little hands on the entire series, you can check over to my Patron and watch the full series from start to finish, uncensored as well, and an extended version, which you deserve. Treat yourself. And it also, of course, helps support my channel and my work. Let me also take this time to say, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, now is the time to do so. In the course of scripting and filming this series, I am into the 9,200 subscriber realm, and we are road mapping our way to 10,000, which is a huge milestone for any YouTube channel. So if you want to be a part of that, subscribe now to be one of the OG 10,000 subs and support me and my work, which I really appreciate you doing. Thank you so much. So unlike 2022, 2023 didn't have as many forms of transphobia that JK Rowling did compared to 2022, 2024, which we will get into or we've already covered. But what did happen, I believe, were quite prominent in their own right. We start the year with Hogwarts Legacy being released, which, because of the boycott before it and all of the discourse surrounding it, felt in itself like such a big cultural moment. We actually start the year by talking about, rather than Harry Potter for a change, everyone was talking about Heartstopper, which was a popular British super LGBTQIA+ novel turned into TV drama that captured the hearts of audiences across the world. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, one of the actors in Heartstopper, Sebastian Croft, faced controversy on Twitter when it was realised after the Hogwarts Legacy was released that he played one of the voice actors to the characters. In early 2023, Hogwarts Legacy voice actor apologises for involvement in the game. Heartstopper star Sebastian Croft apologises on Twitter after it's announced that he is voicing a character in Hogwarts Legacy. I was cast in the project over 3 years ago, back when all Harry Potter was to me was the magical world I grew up with, he tweeted. This was long before I was aware of JK Rowling's views. I believe wholeheartedly that trans women are women and trans men are men. Amidst the boycott of Hogwarts Legacy, this was in itself kind of a controversy because Heartstopper was so pro-LGBTQIA+, to have one of the cast that worked on that connected to the Harry Potter IP and franchise seemed to be kind of a juxtaposition to many of the fans. Later in January, on the 23rd, transgender woman India Willoughby tweeted that I am more of a woman than JK Rowling will ever be. To which JK Rowling replied, citation needed. Next, we need to talk about the New York Times. Speaking from someone that's born and raised British and lives in Japan at the moment, I cannot understand the obsession with trying to make the New York Times work. To me, they are just overtly anti-trans and, in my opinion, centrist if not right-wing. And yet, I find myself talking about them today. The New York Times publishes an op-ed in support of Rowling, one day after being protested by anti-trans coverage. On February the 16th, 2023, The Times ran an op-ed by writer Pamela Port titled In Defense of JK Rowling, asserting that nothing the author has said over the years is transphobic. Honestly, they should have watched this series then. I wish I'd made it sooner. Beloved community leader, organizer, author and artist Cecilia Gentili called the article a slap in the face. On the 17th of February, Cecilia tweeted at New York Times, choosing to run an article in defense of JK Rowling a day after we sent a letter asking for accountability for their transphobic reporting is the hardest slap in the face I have ever received. And I've been slapped. Advocates pointed out the sad reality that running a piece in defense of perhaps one of the world's most notable TERFs is in line with the paper of record's past coverage of trans people. As an open letter signed by over 200 Times contributors states, New York Times coverage over trans issues has been used to support anti-trans legislation limiting access to life-saving care, including Paul's previous writing. But jokes aside, this is exactly why I'm making this series. People to this day are still saying they don't understand what JK Rowling has done that's transphobic. And I'm like, hey, why don't I make 3.5 hours of footage to prove my point that she is very much far beyond transphobic. She's also ableist, denying intersex people exist. Like she's down the pipeline, guys. She may be past the point of no return. Now, another creator that I have to bring up is Contrapoints. And no, I'm not parodying her today. Maybe some of you guessed that in the comments. I'm afraid you are incorrect. I would not parody her because hindsight is 2020. We now know that she had a very lukewarm opinion of the genocide in Palestine and an ill-timed statement about it. In my opinion, she lost a lot of respect. However, she is the topic of discussion in this video because she was asked to be on the podcast called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. Then in February, Barry Weiss's The Free Press releases the podcast titled The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. Megan Phelps Roper, a writer and activist known for rebelling against and leaving the notoriously virulently anti-LGBTQ+ Westboro Baptist Church, launched a podcast series titled The Witch Trials of JK Rowling in January 2023 to explore the author's fall from grace. The podcast is a project of conservative journalist Barry Weiss's The Free Press, which Weiss later sold to Paramount Skydance for $150 million before becoming the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Now, I'm obviously not going to sit through this podcast. Unless you want me to, let me know in the comments. I can do a retrospective, I guess. Does JK Rowling deserve to be defended? Of course not. I mean, even at this point in the series, she has done amped amount against the trans community. She goes on to do way worse, and we know this. But at this point, anyone defending her again, the reason why I made this whole series is because they seem to not understand that what she is saying is overtly transphobic and dangerous to minorities of people. Anyone that still has that mindset, to me, are just falling for the same transphobia. Maybe they don't want to admit it themselves. Maybe they want to claim ignorance, but you can't see what she's done so far and say, well, that's not transphobic. That's just stating fact. It's actually not. She's gone against science and data and ignoring other forms of the same minorities that suit her and benefit her, platforming right-wing people, working with right-wing people to get her points across. So it is harmful to more than just the trans community, which we will go on to see innately. If you also want to know more about what Contrapoints did with regards to the Statement of Palestine and the Tabernacle and Hassan Piker, I did a video about that a few months ago and I cover everything there, so check that out if you want to know more.
So this is basically the entire thing that the podcast called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling was about. This was the podcast with Megan Phelps Roper of Westboro Baptist Church fame and JK Rowling, where a lot of the argument was like, oh, what we really hate about the trans movement is that they use like illiberal methods, and it's so unlike all past movements. Like gay rights wasn't like this, and women's rights wasn't like this, and the civil rights movement, they never did anything violent, and they were always polite, and they never raised their voices, and they never called people names. And it's just like, well, I'm sorry, that historically is not true.
Then, around Trans Day of Visibility, Daniel Radcliffe worked again with the Trevor Project to do a sit down, talking to trans people and hearing their side of things directly from their perspective. On the 29th of March, Daniel Radcliffe hosted a roundtable for queer and trans youth. Fans say his allyship is making Rowling shatter her wine glass. He continued his work to support LGBTQ+ youth in collaboration with the Trevor Project by hosting a roundtable discussing with trans young people for Trans Day of Visibility. It was an absolute privilege to get to meet and listen to this incredible group of young people, Radcliffe said in a statement to The Hollywood Reporter. At the end of the day, if you're going to talk about trans kids, it might be useful to actually listen to trans kids. One could say that a certain young adult fiction author should be listening closely and taking Radcliffe's advice to heart. Unfortunately, Rowling's track record doesn't exactly scream listening to trans kids talk about their own experiences. That's why people quickly rush to social media to praise Radcliffe while also poking fun at Rowling. Daniel Radcliffe has already worked with various organisations, including the Trevor Project, before, right from T-Day when JK Rowling first announced to the world that she was a TERF, and he continues to do that work to kind of counteract and battle against what JK Rowling is putting into the atmosphere. And I just think this is so admirable for an ally. I mean, this really is true allyship in my opinion. But I think one thing that's so apparent by this is just how much trans voices are missing from the anti-trans movement. I mean, obviously there's a reason for that. It doesn't take two and two to put together why they only platform detransitioners. But Daniel Radcliffe is doing so much more than he realizes just by actually sitting down and humanizing trans people, which is something that we're going to need so much more going forward.
Seeing yourself as yourself for the first time is such a transformative experience.
I have a whole identity. I'm not just trans.
I'm a person, you're a person, I treat you with respect, so I deserve it back.
There are some people in the world who are just like not trying to engage with this conversation in any kind of good faith. I think a lot of the time it's just because people don't know a young trans person, so there's just this like theoretical idea about this in their head.
Even if you may think you don't know someone who's queer trans, or you really don't, like at some point you will.
Because no matter how I identify or who I am in this world, we all experience these things that are a part of life.
Looking back at how important this was, like, we needed more of this, you know? With the cast review, we see so little of trans people getting an opinion in the upcoming years. With debates on talk shows and mainstream media, it's so often cis people sitting around and discussing about trans people without including trans voices. And the reason is because if we did that, we would be humanizing ourselves and giving an opinion to what's happening to us that mainstream media didn't want a platform. And by definition, neither did JK Rowling. Now, did the billionaire make enough money from the Hogwarts Legacy game? Apparently not. This was when the HBO reboot of Harry Potter was announced, and the fandom reacted accordingly. On the 3rd of April, Rowling announces she may be developing a Harry Potter TV series with HBO Max, then mocked people who would boycott it. Deadline reported that Rowling was in conversation with HBO Max to develop a TV series based on her Wizard School book, which would include the author as an executive producer on the project. People pointed out the hypocrisy of the decision by HBO Max, another supposedly LGBTQ+ friendly platform, and across social media they expressed their discontent with the streamer for supporting the notable TERF. As more people online committed to boycotting the new series, Rowling responded by mocking them on X rather than taking their fair criticism into account. Activists in my mentions are trying to organise yet another boycott of my work, this time of the Harry Potter TV show. As forewarned is forearmed, I've taken the precaution of laying in a large stock of champagne. Oh, what cunt. On the 4th of April, someone tweeted, setting aside how absurdly unnecessary a Harry Potter reboot is in the first place, I'd rather we not continue to give billions to a woman who has made it her life mission to invalidate the existence of trans women and endanger our lives with her unrelentingly hateful rhetoric. Now, we also know, looking back from where we are with more updates to the HBO reboot, which again I covered before on my channel, this is going to fund her, and it's going to be a large-scale project which will give another generation access to this franchise. And as she already has done by putting money into policy against trans people for the For Women organisation and the £70,000 to the Scottish anti-trans side of the legal battle and everything like that, we know that money is going to go more towards this. She's overtly said so herself. So even with everything we know, if you're not quite convinced she's transphobic yet, or you have a member of your family that doesn't believe it or anything, we now know with hindsight that the money she gains from all of these franchises has been spent taking away the rights of the trans community. So there's no reason to believe that that won't go on to do so 2026 and above. So not only is she verbalizing, is that a word? Not only is she speaking out her transphobic vitriol, but she's putting her money where her mouth is and paying for policies to change. There's a reason I left the UK with my husband and I now live in Japan. We feel safer here in still quite a right-leaning country because of how the UK is right now. Speaking of the rise of fascism, because later on in the series, she goes on to outright Holocaust denial by saying that trans people were not one of the first targeted by the Nazis, and that's just wrong. So we will get to that. I think that's 2024, I'm not sure, but keep an eye out because it develops quite ironically from this point. On the 30th of May, a tweet said the Nazis aligned themselves with TERF because they had the same values. Posey Parker has friends in far-right hate groups, is anti-abortion, and is a complete bigot. We all know the Nazis were there for her. To which JK Rowling responded, you lie and smear, assuming you'll live out your days as a hanging judge and never find yourself in the dock. No cultural moment lasts forever. Yesterday's fanatics realised they joined the wrong mob. Populist movements shrivel and fall apart. Robespierre ended on the guillotine. I may not be pronouncing that right. Robespierre, I don't know. And the Reddit post explains this as JK Rowling compares trans activists to the architects of the Reign of Terror during the French Revolution, which I'm glad they did because I didn't get it myself. And as a lover of his app, it's no surprise that she also agrees with several of Elon Musk's opinions. JK Rowling went on to say on the 21st of June that cis is ideological language signifying belief in the unfalsifiable concept of gender identity. You have a perfect right to believe in unproven essences that may or may not match the sexed body, but the rest of us have a right to disagree and to refuse to adopt your jargon. To me, again, I mentioned this earlier in the series, but this really gives a victim mentality. To be so anti-trans and so against a minority of people that are just trying to live their lives, to choose to look away from the science and the peer review based studies and to deny people their existence and then claim that cis is a slur, I feel like it's projection. It's like, so what you're doing is fine, but we can't call you cisgender. Like, be so for real. Like, chat, is this real? And then to round off the year, somewhat poetically, there was this. Now, a little less eloquently put, on the 17th of October, to a picture that says, "Repeat after us, trans women are women," JK Rowling just very much eloquently put, no. She's a writer, ladies and gents. This small tweet alone is evidence of her being transphobic. But hey, if this wasn't enough, there's always next year. Stick around for next week to maybe let me convince anyone else that doesn't yet believe JK Rowling has done anything transphobic. Okay, chat, I'm getting tired. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into what JK Rowling did that was transphobic in 2023. You will be able to access the rest of the series, as I say, on my Patreon. Otherwise, wait till next week and we will be covering 2024, which is a huge year, actually. So get excited about that. Guess in the comments who you think I'm going to be if you haven't worked it out already. And please do let me know who you think I am this week. I think this one is a little bit harder, actually. We're rocking a ponytail for the first time in a long time, and we're trying to be goth. How is the goth? Is it coming across goth or is it failing? You let me know. Let me know how I did. And thank you for watching to the end. I love you all so much. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah. Bye.